Thanks, that was a great panel. So now it's my esteemed pleasure to introduce our keynote address. Think about what we all do when we come to work each day. We're focused on research to drive sales. We're focused on research to drive insights. We're focused on managing our teams. And we're focused on trying to have a personal impact. But just imagine if your job every day was to work on ad campaigns that were focused on ending your country, Colombia's 52-year civil war. That's what our keynote speaker has done. The man behind these campaigns is the global president of MullenLowe Group Creative Council, as well as the co-chairman and chief creative officer of MullenLowe SSP3. Please help me welcome Jose Miguel Sokoloff.
Wow, that was good. The Colombian music there was really good. That was a nice touch. All right, thank you. Let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. Damn, this is wrong. Anyway, thank you, and it's a little bit scary for a creative director to stand up in front of so many people who do what we fear most. But anyway, I'm going to swallow my fear and tell you my story. And I call this story Building the Airplane as It Flies. Because this was not a very structured approach, but we couldn't have done anything of the things we did, without the wealth of information that we got. And that, and somehow we stumbled upon a process that seems to be very, very enriching. So what I'm going to tell you today is the story of these people, all of the people that you see there, some more handsome than others, that worked together for over 10 years in trying to do something to stop the war in Colombia. And how much we all worked together and how much we learned. So I'm going to tell you a story of many, many mistakes. But let me start by telling you what we knew. We knew that Colombia had been in war for over 50 years. We knew that. And it was a war, a regular war, like any other war that you see on television and in films, right? We also knew that it had caused enormous amounts of pain and death. 220,000 direct victims of the war. We also knew that the guerrillas and the army were the same. You can't really tell which is which. You probably think that the guerrilla is a child, but they were the same people. They were brothers in some cases, cousins. We also knew that the war had caused enormous personal cost to thousands and thousands of families. We got over 6 million displaced population, the second biggest displaced population in the world. And we also knew that people were kind of fed up with the war. This is the same village in two different instances after two different massacres, burying their dead. Actually, we knew nothing. We didn't know anything. We knew what the newspapers told us. But we actually didn't know why people joined this war. It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. After I told you all of this, why would you join the war? Why would you become a part of the army that is causing this to this country? So we needed to listen. And what we asked the government was the opportunity to talk to as many guerrillas as possible and learn why they had joined, why they had become a part of the FARC, what were their dreams when they joined, and what were their frustrations. I picked these pictures because they look like focus groups. But anyway, my team sat with these people for hours. First, trying to never listening to what they told you at first, but trying to get their trust. And after you had their trust, they started telling you. But it took hours. Sometimes it took days. You had to come back. And there was a certain sense of trust that had to be developed in which they understood what they were doing. So we were completely clear at the beginning of each conversation. We're here to learn so that we can get more people out of the jungle. Some of them bought into it and helped, and some did not. But after all the research, we came to one single idea. And that single idea has guided all of our efforts for 10 years. A guerrilla is as much a prisoner of his organization as those he holds hostage. The guerrilla is like a Hotel California. Judging by the music, most of you will know what Hotel California is. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. If you are in the army and you can't do certain things, you can at some point quit. But the guerrilla is a dead-end street. So with this, we started asking them, if you will, why they were there. And we asked them in the typical way, the typical reaction of an advertising agency. Let's do a TV commercial. And that's what we did. And I can tell you up front, it was a complete and utter failure. But I'll play it for you just because I love, you say fail fast, right? Here you go.
Un día me ordenaron fusilar a una pareja a la que acusaron injustamente de traición. Era difícil. Eran pelados. Ella pidió morir primero para no ver muerto a su compañero. Esa mañana me di cuenta que allá no éramos libres, que lo mejor era alejarnos de todo eso.
Piénselo, hay otra vida. La desmovilización es la salida.
So why didn't it work? Because it was fake. Because the voiceover was an actor. Because those boots were not right. Because the jungle didn't look real. It was not shot in the actual jungle where the fighting takes place. And they could see through that. And they said, bullshit, you know? But we had those stories, and we had many of those stories. And we decided that we'd get into radio because that gave us the opportunity of using these voices anonymously. And we started getting these stories on the radio. I could tell you stories, but I may not have time, so I'm going to skip over the stories. But stories that came directly from the guerrilla, and they told their stories, and we inundated the radio. But the radio gave us another advantage. It gave us the capacity to reach deeper and deeper into the places that the guerrilla were. So these stories were the guerrilla actually talking, so they could hear themselves, they could hear their lingo, they could hear their accents, and they started believing these ideas. So,
terroristas, cuando el mismo pueblo, las mismas comunidades nos rechazan, uno se siente mal.
so the radio started coming all the time. We did thousands, hundreds of radio ads. And eventually this happened. One Facebook post said, let's march one day against FARC. And this happened. And this sent a very strong message to FARC, a message that they didn't have the support of the people that they were told they had. So now we were being friendly to them by saying there is a better life, but they had gotten a message that we had nothing to do with, saying people don't really want you. The thing is that in all long-standing communication efforts, it's a constant process. It's very liquid. Everybody was learning. What was the guerrilla learning? They learned that our radio spots were being effective, so they started a rumor, or they started telling their troops that the reason that the guerrillas that they knew were saying what they were saying was because they would be killed if they didn't. That the military were torturing them into saying what it was, whatever they were saying, which I think is pretty obvious. I mean, it took them 4 years to figure that one out. It should have taken them shorter. But we were left with nothing. We couldn't put out more radio ads, and we couldn't put out any more stories because there was a way of saying that it was not true. So we started thinking, what is incontrovertible? And what is controvertible is humanity, the part that we share, what unites us. And we looked at the data, and we realized that at every Christmas season, the number of demobilizations peaked. There was always a peak in demobilization around Christmas. So we, instead of what we thought was the reason, or what we heard was the reason demobilization peaks around Christmas time is because people want to be home. That's all, simply that. And one of my creatives came up with the following rationale. Christmas is very sentimental. What represents Christmas? Christmas trees. And what do we have in the jungle? Lots of trees. So this is what we did.
Says that December is a very important month in their ongoing campaign against the guerrillas.
I think this is complete innovation, making reference to the panel just before. And I think I'd like to add a little bit to that. The military are very good clients because they're willing to risk their lives. So, I mean, risking a couple of Christmas lights is no big deal. But second of all, it takes a lot of optimists. I believe innovators are optimists. And we all thought that this would work, and it did work. It demobilized 331 guerrillas, which was roughly 5% of the guerrilla force at the time. But then we realized that we couldn't do it again. And the reason we couldn't do it again is because the guerrilla moved. And they moved further down the rivers. They told us, we thought that the guerrilla walked a lot. And we found out later by the guerrillas that demobilized that not many guerrillas saw the trees. They heard about them, and they thought it was strange that this was being done, and they discussed it, but they didn't see them. And they told us that the rivers were their highways, that they moved down the rivers. So, and a lot of the recruiting was being done in the river villages. So there was a high possibility that if you did something close to the river villages, you would get guerrillas that belonged to this river villages again. And the next Christmas, this is the activity we did.
Allá en la guerrilla siempre es una fecha de sentimiento, de nostalgia.
Esas son las autopistas, son las carreteras. Allá se usan mucho los ríos para moverse a la guerrilla.
Esta operación tiene como objetivo que el bandido reciba esta bola, la cual lleva un mensaje del pueblo colombiano para que vuelvan a pasar la Navidad con sus familias.
3 de la tarde, 46 minutos, la emisora del Ejército Nacional. Seguimos con esta buena programación para todos nuestros oyentes que están escuchando la emisora del Ejército Nacional. Estamos invitando a todas las personas, allí madre, hijos, amigos de los que hacen parte de las FARC, invitándolos a que en esta Navidad les envíen un mensaje, un regalo, diciéndole allí para que se desmovilicen, para que vuelvan a casa, que hay una familia que los espera, para que ellos vuelvan a la libertad, para que pasen una Navidad en familia.
Que por favor se desmovilicen, que la familia los espera con los brazos abiertos.
Guerrillero, desmovilízate, la Navidad te espera.
Y busquen su familia y vayan a la Navidad, que están toda su familia esperándolos.
Estar al pie de su familia, su papá, su mamá, sus hermanos.
Y acá afuera todos los colombianos los esperamos con los brazos abiertos.
Estamos enviándoles miles de mensajes a la guerrilla para que se desmovilicen, para que regresen al seno de sus hogares, que lo que queremos en este país, los 46 millones de colombianos y el mundo entero, es la paz.
Thank you. So again, the message was concentrate on what unites us. So nobody can argue against it's better to spend Christmas at home that it is in the jungle. It's better to enjoy football. We call it football, you call it soccer, but it's called football. It's better to enjoy it with your friends and with your family. So we started working around those things that unite us, and we didn't judge. We didn't tell them they were doing right or wrong. We just said, come over, there's a better way of doing this. This is an example of a football activity we did. So thank you. I have one of those footballs in my office, which was brought back by a guerrilla to prove that he was peacefully coming. He came back with that ball, and I have it in my office, which is one of the most precious things I have there. Anyway, the country came to negotiate peace in Havana. So it wasn't anymore about demobilizing, because they all understood that they were going to demobilize at some point. So we had to completely restudy the strategy. What was it that worried them about the end of the war? A war that was not going to be won by either side. What was their biggest worry? And their biggest worry was not to be accepted, not to be taken back. And so we went to their mothers, and we asked them for pictures of their guerrillas when they were kids, of their sons, of their kids. And we said, the one powerful thing a mother can always say, before you were guerrilla, you were my son, or you were my child, and come back. And these are a few examples of the many posters and many pictures that we got that eventually were mailed and emailed to us. We got, I don't know, 150, 200 different pictures of mothers who volunteered to send their pictures of them and their kids, so that we put them up in the towns and in the jungles so that the kids saw themselves. As you know, or as you may or may not know, Colombia did sign a peace process. So over this process, we helped demobilize about 18,000 guerrillas. The peace process has been signed. There is now a different country. A few months ago, I flew back to Colombia when the peace process had been signed, and it was a different country. But I think that signing peace is the easy part. It's like declaring war. It's really easy. But if you declare war, then you have to go fight it, right? Signing peace is relatively easy, but then you have to make peace. There was a referendum, and the referendum for peace was lost. So it turns out that the agreement needed to be heavily amended. It was, and now it was approved through Congress. But we still need people to believe that peace is better than war. And this is the last thing that we did, or that we're doing. This is our current campaign that's on the air, reminding people of why now it's not for guerrillas, but for everybody else to say, this is what is possible when we have peace. That's pretty much all I had to say. I have like 2 minutes, so I can take questions if you want. No questions? Great. This is what we're doing now. We are working. One of the problems that we have, or that the country has, is that a lot of the young people are still being recruited by. There's a lot of people who demobilize from guerrillas, who the only thing they know how to do is yield a weapon. That's the only thing they learned in their life. They went into the guerrilla when they were 12 or 13, and that's all they have left. That's all they know. So some of them, one of the biggest challenges is not to let the guerrilla force kind of disappear as an organized military organization and become a lot of criminal bands. And our biggest challenge right now is to stop recruiting, to help to make recruiting of young kids much more difficult so that these gangs don't flourish. Not only give them opportunities and keep the guerrilla busy and occupied, but also to give them opportunities so that, but also to stop the recruiting, because for some kids, the possibility of some kids that are bullied at school, the possibility of getting a gun and walking back and walking those corridors with the corridors of the school with a gun in their back gives them a lot of credibility, and I understand it. But so that's the thing that we're also working on right now.
What
Good.
advice would you have for the United States right here, right now?
Oh, God. I think the United States is a very complex, it has a lot of things. I wish I could answer that more specifically, but there is a lot of problems. Some of them, the recruitment of ISIS, and how can you stop that? So my advice is, I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know, it's very complicated. All right, well, thank you very much.